see what you can find. If a daddy's rich, take her out for a meal. If a daddy's poor, just do...
Hello and welcome. It's the Cinematronix podcast back after it seems to be like forever again. Apologies, but life. And it was just a little quick update on films that have been out over the summer since the last podcast, which was Batman v Superman. So I'm going to go through what my thoughts and feelings, and I'm going to do it with my fellow podcaster. I'll try to do Musketeer with Mr. David Bond.
Podcaster. that was pushing it. Is that like a...
like one for all?
Well, I didn't link it to the Musketeers. I was thinking, is that a play on chocolatier? Does he think I'm fucking Belgian? Good evening, folks.
So we're basically going to go through the recent sort of blockbusters and the popular films.
The greatest summer of all time.
Yeah.
Except all the other ones.
Yeah, it's been a bit of an odd year because it had kind of like a load of promise, and it's been kind of like, yeah, it's been all right. It's been that's basically been the feeling. It's like it's not been anything too terrible, but
Well, there's a lot of are people sick of sequels? Well, no, they've just not been that great. And in some cases, their immediate predecessors in the same series were stronger. We'll get to a couple of examples of that. I don't think people are sick of sequels. I don't think trends like that happen overnight. And, one year you get, it's been a weak summer, and the next year you get record-breaking summer. So I don't think it's fair or right to generalise. But I think a lot of the things I was looking forward to this year have been a little bit disappointing, really.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really show in the box office, but do you think there is like an element of like superhero fatigue? There was talk of that at the beginning of the year, wasn't there? With all the comic book films that were due out.
The highest grossing film of the year so far is a comic book film, and it's done well.
Yeah. And even Suicide Squad's done really, really well.
Yeah, I think the first weekend is normally a reflection of marketing, but the fact that Batman, Superman, and Suicide Squad both had such strong opening weekends tell me that the appetite is still there. It's just the word of mouth was pretty toxic. We've been a bit unfortunate this year. People have gone, the sequels haven't done well, and the examples they've pulled out of things like Ninja Turtles 2, and you think, well, how much of an appetite was there for that in the first place? It's not been great, admittedly, but it's not... I don't think it's impending doom for cinema by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I guess it kind of depends on the product, because I think the key thing for superhero fatigue was I don't know if it flopped, but the new X-Men film, and I kind of felt when that was coming out, for the first time I was like, I really can't be bothered. I felt there was no appetite for it. I think, we've kind of seen X-Men been done to death now, and I think the movie's just like, yeah, enough's enough now. At least for that particular series, I think we need a bit of a break from it to get excited about it again.
I think that's it. I mean, there's been a lot of it. How many times has he played Wolverine? How many years?
Yeah. Plus, also, you got all the Marvel stuff in between that, or the other Marvel stuff that kind of do better jobs. I mean, I wasn't that a bigger fan of Days of Future Past, but that got pretty critical lauded. I mean, everyone loved that, but I was one of the few going, yeah, but that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. This isn't working for me. But I don't know when. But by the time Apocalypse came out, I think no one seemed interested, and I think that's kind of telling. I don't know.
I'm sure we'll get to X-Men in just a little while. Where did the summer start, Chris? What are we going to start with?
Well, they've been starting later. I mean,
or earlier and earlier. Depends how you look at it.
Yeah, earlier. Sorry, I should say. such as with Batman v Superman. I mean, that came out in March. I mean, that was the last podcast we did.
Yeah.
We were pretty damning on it. I mean, I don't know. Did you watch the extended cut?
I did.
You did. Your feelings towards it, was it kind of like you can't polish your turd?
Sort of. I mean, what it did was it mitigated some of the worst elements in that you had no build up to what Lex was doing in the theatrical cut, and you had no connective tissue between the scenes. This improved all of that, but I don't know that it improved the overall effect. If you had to say to me, pick one or the other, I'd pick the extended cut, which suggests it's better, but it's by such a small degree. I don't think it really matters. It's still a huge letdown.
I think it's the extended one is a better film because the plot makes sense.
It hangs together
structurally.
It hangs together, but it explains things better. But also, I just feel a connection between scenes that wasn't there before. Yeah. So I do think it's better.
I think, but what I was going to say, I think it's a better film. Obviously, better film because the plot makes more sense. Everything, as you say, it hangs together a bit more. It's like little sort of detail, like it's little sort of moments where you see Superman actually doing some shit. He didn't just fly off when that.
We actually see a bit of Clark Kent, which is a bit of a novelty.
There's he don't just like bugger off when that court exploded. Yeah. You actually see him try actually save someone who's injured and then look around and see like the results of what's happened, and there's like you get the reason why he felt the way he did, and it works so much better. You also get the explanation of why he didn't see the bomb, little sort of things like that. There's
I think that was very helpful because in the theatrical cut, he comes in, says nothing, stands around like a lemon and leaves, and that's just poor. But I think in relative terms that it's a little better. But had we never had the theatrical cut and this had been the version that had come out, I think we'd be saying all the things we said just about this version.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't have been as damning, I don't think. But I think the strong crux of it was, I think, the main sticking point, at least for me, and I think for you as well, it's the interpretation of the characters that is the more damning. It's like I said it on the podcast.
I think it's awful the take on the characters. Yeah, totally.
On the podcast, it's like, yeah, but that's not Superman. He's not. I think they do a slightly better job in the extended cut.
I'd agree with that. I think Superman's improved,
but it's like.
But it's by degree. It's still a very poor take on the character, but it's not quite as awful as the version we watched them off.
Offing people and and stuff like that. So
time hasn't improved it very much. I mean, the reason I saw it again is I will invest in this universe for a while. That's going to have a shelf life if it doesn't improve, but I'm willing to just invest in this for just a little while and see how we go. Let's wait at least until we get to a handful of different directors with their fingers on it. We're obviously going to talk about a different director in this series very soon, but let's at least see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, guess we'll see, because there was Wonder Woman coming up, and then there's Justice League next year as well.
Justice League Part 1 comes out towards the end.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some excitement in terms of like Snyder might have learned his lesson because there's a bit of humour in there and things like that. I'm not entirely sure on that. I think it's I think
Suicide Squad had a great couple of trailers. We'll get to Suicide Squad later. I don't really want to ruin it now, but no. I think the fact is, like or hate Suicide Squad, the end result wasn't what we thought we were getting from the trailers, kind of, and so it's made me very wary. I think there's been a lot of cliches over the years, particularly trailers for a comedy. Oh, all the best bits are in the trailer. Well, that's not quite true. Normally, a decent trailer, there's some correlation normally between, is the trailer good? Does the end film come out well? But DC now have fooled us a couple of times. So whoever they get to cut the trailers does a really good job. And the end result, I don't know. But I have to say, just judging what was put in front of us, and because that's all we can do, I thought the Justice League trailer looked quite interesting. And the tone did feel like quite the course correction.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it could be a reason why Suicide Squad was a mess, because they did try to reshuffle, like from the criticisms from Batman v Superman. But it's hard. It's hard to kind of like change a film when it's already been made, or most of it's already been shot. So
particularly when you think Suicide Squad came out in, I don't know if we were in August or it was late July. It came out, but a few weeks ago now, and Batman Superman was March, and they were doing hurried reshoots, and you think, well, there aren't many big tentpole sort of studios that film that close to release.
Yeah. I think it's kind of, well, we'll get to Suicide Squad later on. But what happened after that? I think we had Jungle Book. Was that's next on the list?
Jungle Book, I think, was the next I saw. Yeah, definitely. Did you see it?
I did, and it was one of those ones that quite surprised me how much I actually liked it. It's quite harsh, quite brutal. Idris Elba's Shere Khan is quite it's quite intimidating. It's quite scary, particularly for a PG film. But I think overall, I really liked it. I liked the visual effects. I was amazed how real the animals looked. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. I think it was very much the general story of the cartoon, but with a different ending. That's the headline if you haven't seen it, really.
Basically, stays rather than goes.
More or less, yeah. But it is more or less the same plot, the same beats. I thought the voice casting, there is a tendency, certainly in Hollywood, to cast big names to do voices as opposed to the right voices. But I thought here it worked extremely well, because they said, well, they've cast Scarlett Johansson, and I thought, well, they've cast her because she's attractive in real life, but actually she does have quite a seductive voice, and it works for the character she's playing. I actually thought all the casting was spot on. It's difficult because a kid has to lead the whole film. And I think as those who listen to our other podcast, neither Chris nor I are fantastically big fans of child actors, but I thought he did a really good job. I thought he was well cast.
He wasn't annoying.
No, he wasn't. And it was like Mowgli from the cartoon brought to life. He sort of moved like him. I wasn't wildly in love with it. But I enjoyed it just fine, and I just think Jon Favreau, when you give him a bit of space and leverage, does well, and he's just the sort of thing I would like him to get involved in DC, because he did such a good job for Marvel. But yeah, good solid stuff is what I'd say. I mean, some people raved about it, and I can't quite see that, but yeah, I enjoyed it just fine, and I thought it was well cast, well made, and better than it really had any right to be.
I think it balanced the right line of being traditional but taking a few risks, doing some things a bit different. It was a PG film but had very adult themes. I mean, it was kind of like a very dark underline. I mean, obviously, Shere Khan is absolutely brutal, particularly the scene where he kills a car.
Sorry, say that again.
The particular scene where Shere Khan kills Car. Is Car the Panther?
I can never remember the names, to be honest with you, but I know what I mean.
The lead wolf. I thought, fucking hell, that's...
yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. It's been a few months since I saw it. I remember it now. And the thing is, it's quick and it's brutal and it's unexpected.
Yeah. And it takes you back. But also, I really kind of enjoyed Christopher Walken as King Louis.
Singing. Yeah.
Well, it was just his take. I mean, you obviously think of Louis and he's like, just kind of very happy and bouncy almost, but here he's absolutely huge. And they've scary as fuck.
I know, and they've matched the animation to Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
It really does look like
but it had
an animal
almost like
version
a Colonel
of
Klutz to him. It was like it was cross between that and a head of a mafia. Which is kind of like, it was kind of like logical thinking. Like, well, that's kind of what
I,
it is.
I enjoyed it just fine. I remember thinking, and I don't know what its running time is, but I remember thinking it was a touch too long.
Yeah.
But that's all. It was, pretty decent. And it will get a sequel.
Is it getting a sequel?
It's getting a sequel. What they can do with that, I don't really know. Because obviously, I think Jungle Book might be based on Rudyard Kipling. And I don't know if there was any like follow-up stories to it. Excuse my ignorance there.
Well, there is an animated to Jungle Book 2.
I know, but Disney was throwing out a lot of
yeah.
direct-to-video stuff in the 90s that I don't know what that means or doesn't mean in terms of... I mean, we've basically just seen the animated Jungle Book made into a live-action film effectively with some changes. I don't know if you'd want to do that with a direct-to-video Disney sequel.
But we're getting essentially the Andy Serkis film. Is it next year? Will it be next year now, or has it been postponed?
I don't know.
But yeah, they're supposed to be doing that, aren't they? Andy Serkis doing his own take.
There was a competing version of it, which seems to happen almost by coincidence a lot. Yeah.
Films with the same basic premise.
Yeah. Volcano and
White House getting seized.
yeah, absolutely.
So what was next on the list? Have you seen Nice Guys?
No, and I don't know why I haven't seen Nice Guys. I was looking at. I mean, I saw a teaser poster for it, and I thought that's got disaster written all over it. Then I saw the name Shane Black on it, and I don't dislike Shane Black, but I think he's a bit over lionized. I mean, I'm not. Everything set at Christmas. Wasn't that fond of Iron Man 3, and think a lot of his classic stuff's good, but only good. So I wasn't that drawn to it, but then I started hearing it was good and didn't get to it. And I must do at some point. I take it you saw it?
I saw it. It was one of those films. It was an odd thing because I was really, really looking forward to it. And when I watched it, I really, really enjoyed it, but I can't say it's a great film, if that makes any sense.
Was it a little bit overhyped for you?
I think so, but I think that, there was no... Look, I love Shane Black films, so
I know it's very
so the fact that it's a new Shane Black film, there's no way it's not going to be like overhyped for me. It's like it's going to be overhyped. There's no way two ways about it. And the trailer looked great. It was one of those. It's very funny. I think the two leads work really well together. They do have like good screen chemistry. The girl who plays Ryan Gosling's daughter is really, really good. Is essentially like the moral compass of the film, essentially. And it has a good nihilist approach in the fact that he just doesn't give a fuck. Like it's the sort of film you watch and you think like, right, well, what's have the heroes achieved? And the answer is fuck all. but you just spent like 2 hours of them just dotting around, like, and it's like
it's a film it's a film I intend to get to.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a particularly great film, but it's a very enjoyable film. I think what my feelings was like, it's not great, but I'd happily watch this cast directed by Shane Black. For as long as you want. It's.
If he wanted to say, right, that's my repertory company now, and I'm just going to make films with these guys, you'd be kind of happy.
Yeah, it's it's just entertaining. You can just like watch it. It's the rapport they have, which is good. But it's not great. I mean, there's some sort of questionable things that happen, like some random acts of violence thing. Was that necessary? But it is what it is.
Is it kind of an R-rated tone?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I think it was a 15 over here. I believe.
Our ratings don't match up, and not only that, you've got it's a different body giving that rating.
Yeah.
So I know sometimes, like Batman, Superman, the R-rated cut was only like a 12 over here, and it's like, well, that can't be right. Well, of course it can be right. It's a different body and different people with different criteria. But I know broadly they tend to line up, but a 15 and an R is not a surprise, really.
But what struck me, and we'll get to Suicide Squad again, but I didn't feel Suicide Squad's a 15. I did not feel. I did not sort of see why it was a 15 when I see it at cinema. I mean, I've seen 12 certificates that kind of match that criteria almost. So I do wonder why that
I'd really have to sit and think about it because off the top of my head, I can't either.
So I was expecting a few sort of bloody gunshots.
I was expecting a lot more aggressive and probably explicit exchanges verbally, and I was expecting more blood.
But it just seemed I
thought it was fairly tame. I thought it was extremely family friendly, but actually, I think it was PG-13 in America. That's what I'm saying. They don't always match up. They've gone out of their way to get a PG-13 in their biggest market, and we're sat here going, "I don't understand if that was a 15." Well, normally
it could be over something silly one, but like the bit when Batman punches Harley.
Yeah, you said fuck twice or whatever. You know what I mean? Instead of once. I don't really know, but yeah.
I know. And so what was next on it? Was it Civil War?
Yeah, it was Civil War as far as I recall. Civil War there's a lot of hyperbole around Marvel now because they've got such a good record in recent years. I thought Civil War was decent. In fact, more than decent. I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I don't think it's the equal of the Winter Soldier. I don't think it's the equal of Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't think it's the equal of the first Avengers. They're trying to balance ridiculously big casts now. And it was better than it had any right to be, balancing that bigger cast. The Spidey bit was great. Captain America is getting better with every outing. But I still think that they're trying to cram too much onto the screen. I'm not the biggest fan of the teen-ups in a lot of ways. You know, my favourite film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far is Captain America. Winter Soldier, yeah, absolutely. And Civil War is a pretty good follow-up, and I certainly think the Russos have handled the ensemble better than the end result from Age of Ultron.
I mean, yeah, it stands next Avengers film in good stead, doesn't it? The fact that they've done a good job as they have.
I just think they're a very, very good. I don't want to knock it too much actually, because I actually think they might be the perfect mix of men and material.
Yeah.
I think they might be absolutely right for this. By the time we saw Age of, forget all the debates with the studio at the moment because we don't know the truth quite of what happened there. But I was ready for Whedon to go, and the thing is, I enjoyed the Avengers, but by the time I watched Age of Ultron, there were beats in it that I was sick of seeing. Like, for example, just that action beat where someone's behind our hero. We don't know that our hero knows he's there, and he sort of knocks his fist back and knocks him out without even looking. Whedon has done that to death. And I'm bored with it.
Even in Buffy and things like that.
Well, I didn't watch a lot of Buffy, to be fair, but I just felt like I was watching a tired retread from somebody who didn't want to be there. And I think stuff he's kind of half said since backs that up. So I think the Russos have done a very good job. But yeah, they were trying to balance a hell of a lot in this film. And they did a decent job, but yeah, trying to cram that much into one film makes it a less cohesive end result than something like The Winter Soldier was.
Because I think this was really overly praised as well. I mean, I think it was the first film that got 5 stars in Empire and stuff, and I think a lot of comic book fans were pretty much like, oh my god, I think this is probably the best Marvel film they have done.
There's a case for saying that simply by the sheer range of heroes that are in it. You know, the very fact that you've got Cap and Iron Man on different sides, there's emotion in that as well. Again, I don't want to knock the film too hard because what the film does that nobody ever does.
It's probably one of the biggest Marvel films, but yet the story's actually quite personal.
Yeah, and the thing is, it sells both of their points of view. Whereas when you think Batman and Superman, you think, well, no, they're both really fucking dumb in this. and that neither of them really have a point worth seeing. And the film didn't skimp on it, but didn't lose us in the technicalities of their arguments either. They really did. I thought, the more I think about it, they did a really good job. It's just the end result feels just slightly overstuffed. That's all.
Yeah, I think when I watched it, I thought the script was actually genius in terms of like dissecting each character's motive and for having like. I think what sold it to me was having, spoiler alert, but it's been out for a while now. Peggy Carter's funeral and having Agent Carter, what's her name?
Sharon.
Sharon Carter. Kind of reading out Peggy's words, and for that kind of being the inspiration for Cap to
bits of it are brilliant. And the thing is,
come to the decision
on paper, they're on the opposite sides you would expect.
What you mean?
If someone gave you a plot synopsis of Iron Man and then Captain America, and then told you down the line this film was going to happen, you'd assume the opposite sides. You would assume Iron Man would be the sort of non-conformist, and Steve would actually be the sort of government's boy.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show how times have kind of changed, because Tony Stark was like the rebel, and now he's kind of like conformed a little bit. Now Steve
he's riddled with guilt.
Well, he's come out of a time where it was different back then. It was a time where like he knew where he stand. Now it's a little bit, it's not as obvious. I mean, who is the enemy? Like it comes to the point where it comes to the point of like he's Captain America. He comes from like from the land of freedom. Now he's been told, no, you have to work in confines. Like you need to work in a controlled environment. You can't do what you can't go and do what you need to do because until we say so. It's like fuck no. I mean, to be honest, I'm in terms of the film, I'm totally with Cap, but I don't think that the film sold Tony's motive. I thought Tony's motive was a little bit flawed. I think he basically used his guilt really, even though the whole ideology of like that woman who had her son got killed.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing. That's the point. That's how much they're trying to cram into the film.
Yeah.
I think they've done a great job, but they've got to remind you he feels guilty and sell it quite quickly. So they have to. Yeah, they have to. I don't want to be too critical because if you're going to do a film like this, I think this is about as well as you're going to do it. Yeah. Everyone's terrific in it. I thought they did sell the two different sides very well. Yeah, I mean it was solid, but as I say, if I was ranking Marvel films, which we'll be doing down the line on our other podcast, it's not top 2 or 3 for me, but it's not far outside.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really solid. I think it's really well good. I don't. It might be part of like superhero fatigue, but I'm kind of getting a little bit all right with Marvel. It's like they're consistently good, and I can't knock it.
I actually think they're consistently kind of mediocre, and that sounds like horrible because mediocre, despite meaning pretty averagey, underwhelming, is kind of often used as a bit of an insult, and I don't mean it as one. That if you look at their slate, they've done 13 films at the time of recording. They've got another one in the can because Doctor Strange is finished, and I know they're filming other things, but the fact is, released, we've got 13 films. Only 2 or 3 of them have been really good. The rest have been, good, all right, not bad.
I think they've been consistent.
Yeah,
that's
what you're going to get. You very rarely walk in and they're terrible. You very rarely walk in and they're brilliant. But every now and again, they produce something absolutely sublime. And a couple of years ago, they released The Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy in the same year. And you just think, that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
But the year before, it was like Iron Man 3 and Thor 2, neither of which were that amazing.
I loved Iron Man 3. But again, I'm a Shane Black fanboy, yeah. So, But yeah, 4-2 was very forgettable, sadly. So yeah, I don't know what it is. I think you're probably right. I think it's because Marvel do take the wise step, unlike Warner Brothers. They do take the wise thing. Like they kind of like control it, and it's they don't take as many risks, which I think it is a detriment to the films.
You're not going to transcend very often if you do that.
But it's consistent enough. It's complacent enough, and it's probably better. You'll probably they're a better course for success as a series. I think that doing what they're doing. But that being said, they are starting to learn. I mean, they are moving away from the tropes of there's like something like a city like gets demolished each time, or there's everything explodes in the final act, or something along those lines. I mean,
well, we're going to talk about 2 films in this show now that have the sort of blue beam going up to the sky.
Yeah,
superhero film. I just making a film's really difficult, and it's a collaborative process, and so I can understand how films come out bad, but I can't understand necessarily how films come out that cliched. Because I've never made a film in my life, but if I sat in like a meeting with execs and they outlined this idea where they're fighting a threat where this beam's going up to the sky, I'd immediately say, well, knock that on the fucking head. Because we've seen that to death. Civil War was pretty good. Every time they do the team-ups, it feels more like product to me. And it is product. I don't have a problem with it being product. These are big corporate entities. But the Winter Soldier seemed to have some personal vision behind it. This didn't, but it was very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I keep meaning to rewatch it because I've only ever seen it the once.
Well, I'm slowly Marvel's 2 series away on our other podcast, so I'm slowly recollecting them. I'm up to Thor 2, actually, in terms of what I've got. No, Winter Soldier, actually.
Oh, your favourite.
So I'm up to that now. So I've got another 4 or 5 to collect. Yeah. All really good, solid product. There's very little Marvel I ever go and see them, and I think it's bad. And so, yeah, Civil War was solid, and I do think the Russo brothers have produced 2 of the better films in the series, one of which I think is the best in the series. So I'm quite hopeful for Infinity War.
Yeah, I mean, they've changed it now from part 1 to
2 different Avengers projects,
which I think I like that. I think that's a wise move because we know we're not probably going to get like a cliffhanger.
I would assume that, and it's just an assumption and kind of a guess, but I would think these things would be changed by exception. In that the studios come up with this plan and it involves this 2-part Infinity War. And it's a result of like thrashing out the story that they've said, well, we can do this in 1 film and that leads on logically to this. And they've come up with like a second idea. If it's happened organically, then I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, I think, and this is part why Marvel have done really well. They've treated their material just like the comics. They feel like another. They've attached each film as if in the same way that the comics work in their universe. So it feels like each film feels like another storyline of a comic.
Yes.
And they kind of work in that way, in the fact that they all kind of interact with one another in that sort of same way. They also kind of like moving on to different things like sort of Civil War. That they ended it in a much different way. The villain was someone completely left the field, someone you either sympathised with and had like a more of a personal motive, really, and tried a different tactic other than the fact that I've got a thing that will cause mass destruction and I'm going to use it to take over the world or destroy the world, rather than that, rather than like, no.
Because it was secondary. It was a secondary plot. I mean, Marvel have not been great for memorable villains. They haven't. But it's serviceable for what the film's trying to do. I mean, really, I go in every time now expecting it to sort of collapse in on itself. And every time I come out and they've just about kept the plate spinning, I'm happy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm eating peas. I'm having my dinner. Speaking of comic book films, and taking chances, X-Men, Apocalypse.
Oh, this
Right.
wasn't good. This wasn't good. As somebody who is the age he is now, I kind of look at Bryan Singer with ever-growing horror, because the first thing I saw him do was The Usual Suspects.
Yeah.
So he started with a masterpiece, and he used to get the sort of from visionary director kind of epithets for years.
Now he's
And
done Jack
now,
the Slayer.
well, when Matthew Vaughn left to go and do Kingsman, and they put him back in charge, I was like, not sure about that. And Days of Future Past, I thought was okay. I enjoyed it just fine. Didn't think it was as good as First Class. There was a teaser for this after the film that was neither here nor there, really. And then I started seeing trailers for it, and I'm not that knowledgeable on the X-Men comics, but you shouldn't have to be. It's a film. And I thought Apocalypse looked fucking awful. And I thought the trailers looked awful.
You look like Ivan Hughes.
I just thought everything about this was horrible. I really didn't like it in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't make any sense. He gets random people surrounding him who stand around and do nothing. We're never really quite sure what his goal is. And it's just a bad film. And I think we're at this point in the cycle with this cast that they're all a bit big for the role now, in as much as they signed up for their 3 films. They're on the 3rd film. When Jennifer Lawrence started, I think she may have been nominated for Winter's Bone, but she wasn't a big star. And since then, we've had the Hunger Games and other things, and Oscars and Oscar nominations. And it's bloody obvious she doesn't want to do the makeup anymore. And you can explain it as much as you like with different story beats. The fact is, Jennifer Lawrence didn't want to be there.
Do you
And
think...
she gave a horrible performance as a result, I thought.
Well, it's basically kind of Katniss again. Basically.
Yeah, more or less. But she just didn't look committed to it at all. And it's really silly now on the timeline, because they put it in the 80s, and frankly, with only a couple of little beats, there was no reason for it to be there. But they've moved on 2 decades since First Class. And you see Havoc, and Havoc's meant to be 37. and he looks early 20s, because, funnily enough, he is. And it's okay with characters. I mean, because somebody said that about Mystique. Well, we know if you've been paying attention, she ages slower. So that's okay.
And she can just look younger anyway.
She can look however she wants. But even on just basic aging, she's aging at about a quarter of the pace. So in 5 years, she's aged 5 years. Funny
but even
enough,
without that, you can just say, well, she can.
Yeah, it's absolutely fine, but it's really struggling. I thought the action was really weak. Virtually none of it really made any sense, and the only bits of it that sort of semi-worked were rehashes of the last film, like Quicksilver. But even that was a lot better the first time we saw it. So I was disappointed, but not disappointed in that I went in with low expectations. Forget reviews, just based on trailers and everything else. It had a 2-year turnaround for the last one, which doesn't seem to suit films franchises these days. Marvel's have got a bit of an exemption for that because there's so many minds on it. I just thought it was really, really weak. And none of it really makes an awful lot of sense. Apocalypse was not a particularly good villain. And also the whole Charles losing his hair thing.
I thought that in the trailer. When they kind of make a point of it in the trailer at the end, he sort of have that shot of Charles, the door opening. It's like, what was the point? There
is no point. It's supposed to be a different continuity now from the original, because it's been rebooted by Days of Future Past. Well, presumably they didn't face Apocalypse in the original timeline, so how did he lose his hair there? None of it makes a lot of sense. And okay, you can just give it a pass if you so wish. But I didn't like this film.
I like the 80s chic, but
I didn't think they really used that at all. I didn't think it was enough in the score. I didn't think it was enough in the style.
Yeah.
There was no real reason for this to be in the 60s. I don't know why we've gone on 2 decades since First Class. I really don't. And the next one, they're talking about it being in the 90s.
Yeah, well,
Well, if that,
they have to now, but then...
well, yeah, but then you've got, if it's still the same cast, which is far from a given because they all had three film contracts, you're going to have Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy at like 39, 40, about 4 or 5 years away from like 60 somethings in the first film. It's just, you haven't thought this through at all. What are you doing? Inconsistencies in, I mean, Angel, is that the same Angel we saw in X3?
No, well, it's different universe now, isn't it? Because they can kind of confuse themselves with the whole...
Well, yeah, they can, but he was born before the whole universe changed.
I know.
Because this is 1983, and Angel's about 20.
It doesn't make any sense now, because they've kind of rewritten X3 now, Last Stand, and they've just kind of like gone
by continuity. But if he's like 10 in whatever year it was, 1990 or whatever it was, then he'd be the same age in this continuity.
Well, they haven't even done him justice anyway. Like,
no,
even this is like not giving anything to do. He was just like a flat out.
All
bad
the
guy.
Mutants there are in this world.
And he's an original X-Men. He is an original X-Men. So why is he one of the X-Men?
And the worst thing about it is just the complete lack of confidence, because First Class has Wolverine in a little cameo just saying "fuck you." That's it.
That's perfect. That's all we need.
And it's a great film. I think, or I certainly think, it's not flawless, but it's probably the best in the franchise for me.
I agree.
And its biggest problem actually was it was rushed, so its visual effects look bad, but the visual effects in this look terrible in places, particularly that big cargo ship. When things come off that, it looks a bit PlayStation-y. But I think they crammed Wolverine into this. He didn't need to be in it at all. And it's just like, well, hang on a minute. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, at the end of Days of Future Past, he's taken away by Colonel Stryker, but it turns out that's actually Mystique, so she's squirreling him away. Mm. And in this film, he's under the lock and key from the real Stryker. And I'm thinking, well, if we'd gone from Brett Ratner to Matthew Vaughn, or Brett Ratner to Bryan Singer, or even Matthew Vaughn to Bryan Singer,
you'd understand, because
I'd understand. But Bryan Singer did the last fucking film, and they had a teaser for it ready by the time the last film came out. This had been pretty much written by the time he was going around the world promoting the last one. So I just think it's all very lazy, and I'm at a point that a guy I thought could have had a very, very special career, I'm now hoping he has nothing to do with this anymore.
Let me just finish my lunch. Yes. I'm with you. Why couldn't they just continue the First Class route and just, let's show them the early years?
We could have been in 1969. I don't see why.
Keep it in the 60s.
Yeah. Move forward in real time, if you like. Age with the actors. Mm. That was 2011. This came out in 16. That was, I think, 1961, wasn't it? Mm. Cuban Missile Crisis. So we should be in about 1966. I don't see what's wrong with that.
I mean, if I had one problem with First Class, was I felt that they rushed the whole story too much. Like, they could have literally, where First Class ended, you could pretty much just start the first X-Men off, because it pretty much tied everything up for you in terms of where they are as a character. Even Xavier's in the wheelchair, and he just basically wheeled off the same wheelchair off the set of X-Men.
I mean, he's still got his hair, but anything can happen in 3 decades or 4 decades.
It's like you got breathing room for let that happen.
He's dressed and looks like Xavier. Mm. Then you get to Days of Future Past, and he's dressed like a fucking hobo.
I mean, what did my head in the most out of Days of Future Past was the fact that the whole that bullet didn't cripple him. He just needs to take a drug, but it suppresses his mutant powers. I'm like, I was like thinking, really, you found a magical drug that.
Christopher Reeve would be gutted if he was still around now.
And not only
all
that,
it takes is a bit of somatogen.
He's found a miracle drug that could cure people. You can make people walk. I mean, let's just say, for you're paralyzed from the waist down, and you're not a mutant, you'd be like, well, fine, I haven't got any mutant powers. I don't mind suppressing whatever things I've got. If I can,
But not
I
only
can
that,
walk again.
I know it's been written out of existence, but presumably science moves along at much the same pace. We get to like 2006 and they found a cure for the mutant gene. But Charles had it in the fucking 70s. So, yeah. I think it's not the series. I mean, having just done it, I don't think it's necessarily the series to get hung up on continuity because it's never been that good with it. But I'm just sick of it's the same director. Bryan Singer's been a producer or a director on all of it. He's been there all the way through. And he got Days of Future Past and First Class, which allowed him to write X3 out of existence. And given a clean slate, he's just pissed over it all. I actually would say this is of the films that have of the non-spin-offs, so I can't count X-Men Origins in this. I think this is weaker than X3. I think this is the weakest X-Men film.
Weaker than X-Men Origins, Wolverine?
No,
okay.
Just saying.
Oh,
no,
okay.
not that excluding
Oh, okay,
spin-offs.
sorry, yes.
Not counting the Wolverine films in it or anything like that.
Might have to agree with you on that.
I would rather watch X3 now if you made me watch one.
I mean, yeah, because I think at least X3 played with some ideas. Like, the whole idea of, the debate of, well, what would you... If you are mutant, would you take it, And it did offer some debate, and I think it had some nice moments, and I think probably my favourite moment is at the very end with, I think most of my favourite moments with Magneto showing his kind of stopper, he turns his back on Mystique when she gets hit with the cure gun. And it's it's kind of like, oh, you twat.
Don't get me wrong. That I do not like X3. I'm not saying it's a film.
But there are moments.
I thought this was worse. I thought this was more of a mess. I thought it looked made by committee. It just looked cobbled together.
Cosplay as well.
And also Apocalypse looked terrible.
And what kind of boggled my mind? They set the whole thing with Quicksilver, with being his dad. They had the perfect thing, and he's thought, nah, won't do it.
I know. It's like, well, what was the point of all that?
And it's
like, hang on a minute.
Okay, you're going to tell maybe one day,
I know, and the thing is as well, the whole aging thing, I can give it some passes, but he was clearly late teens in the last one, and we're now 10 years on, so he's got to be late 20s. So let's say he's 28. How old is fucking Magneto meant to be? And if you do anything on the timeline and when they were at college and all the rest of it, it doesn't work. None of it works. Now, I'm all for just switch your brain off and have fun. But if you start drawing attention to your flaws like this in a way I can't ignore them, then yeah, I'm going to have a problem.
Especially when you started off being a more grounded take on the X-Men.
Yeah.
I mean, that time X2 was hailed as the best. And it's if only Bryan Singer was able to complete his vision with X3, maybe it might have been a better film. But by the looks of the way he treats the Phoenix Saga with Jean Grey, they haven't even got that right. It seems to sort of have this.
I thought she was terrible as well.
I mean,
the new Jean Grey.
They seem to have this. Always take that the Phoenix actually is within her when in fact is actually a cosmic entity that goes into Jean Grey, that Jean Grey kind of connects with, and it's that's the sort of thing that will soon come up with fans going, oh, that's not right. He stopped getting Jean Grey wrong. And it's the second time now, and they do live that kind of logic of the fact that no, the Phoenix is actually some sort of mutant power that lives within Jean Grey mysteriously. When and also what was Apocalypse's powers? It wasn't really
completely. He wanted to swap into Charles's body, and I'm thinking you can draw the powers of any mutant and harness them, and you want to be in the body of a cripple. This is fucking bollocks.
Well, to be fair, he can then sort of go into another mutant who can walk, so.
But he can do that anyway. He was controlling Charles. It's not very good. It's not very thought out at all.
No. Oh, okay.
Very disappointing. And what made it worse is I've got no idea if this film was rushed or on a particularly truncated time frame. It's only 2 years since the last one, but that can be done. But I thought the effects looked horrible in this film for a big budget film. And this is a series that has been successful. I mean, to this point, it was as close to a sure thing as you're going to get. These films do a certain amount of money. So there's no excuse for it, really. So I wasn't furious with it. I've largely forgotten it. There's a couple of things you've said this evening, talking about them, that I thought, oh yeah, I'd forgotten that. But yeah, the moment I give it any thought, I didn't enjoy this film at all. I didn't like Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. I thought she was really, really flat in it. And to watch an actress it's subjective, but I think Jennifer Lawrence is very good, and she's bloody awful in this. So I just think, well, it's all looking very tired for something that was effectively rebooted 5 years ago.
I did think, Fassbender's always good.
Yeah, I thought he was terrific. He's always good. You really felt his pain. I thought it was good.
I think apart from Xavier's, creepy attempts to stalk Rose Byrne, in a weird way, I thought he was generally quite good. James McAvoy, but to go back with the Wolverine thing, I do agree with you. It is pointless, but I did enjoy it. It was surprisingly bloody as well. It was like a random thing where, like, holy shit, they've just gone full Weapon X here.
I'm just a great one for, like, grasp the nettle, though. And I just think, like, if you know something is coming and you can't avoid it, get on with it and embrace it. He's nearly 50. He's going soon. He's got another one out next year. That's it, he says. Things can always change, but he's strongly suggesting he's done playing Wolverine. So if you want to continue to capitalize on the X-Men franchise, you've got to do it without Hugh Jackman and possibly without Wolverine for a while. But you already did it in X-Men First Class. So I can't see why he's being crammed in left, right, and centre, because these films are doing okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where they're going to go with Wolverine. It's like, it just seems to be more about, well, he's a name, he makes money. He'll play it as long as like people are going to willing to show up. I reckon people will show up when he's 60 playing Wolverine.
Yeah,
as ridiculous as it sounds.
No, I think Hugh Jackman's just tapped into something with people. Not to a Marvel degree. It's not like his films do $1 billion or something, but they do quality business. And he is the most marketable of the X-Men. So from that point of view, of course I get it. It's a money-making business. But at the same time, he's gone soon, and you already did it. If First Class didn't exist, I might understand it. But he is, to all intents and purposes, not in that.
It would have made more sense.
Deadpool did 750 million worldwide. That outdid any X-Men film.
So,
and it's doable. You don't have to have Hugh Jackman crammed in everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you could have easily let Hugh Jackman have his Wolverine franchise and then continue on with the 60s X-Men First Class franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to top it or to cap it off, you could do Days of Future Past at the end, just to kind of like join them all together as a final farewell kind of thing. I reckon.
Disappointing though, but I can't honestly say I'm that surprised, because by the time I did go in, obviously the reviews were out and it was pretty clear it wasn't going to be good. And it's another entry in a summer that's underperformed, but it's underperformed because of word of mouth. I don't buy that it's. X-Men First. Days of Future Past did very well.
Yeah, I think in my opinion, I think we're just tired of it. I think we're just like a bit bored of X-Men. I think the general consensus is, I think we're just, enough's enough now. It's difficult to predict because, the last film did really well and was received well critically, so it's hard to really know when to cash your chips. But I think now is like, just give it a rest.
For the time being, won't happen.
Let Jackman have his final Wolverine film, then give it a few years, then reboot it. see what deals you can make with Marvel. You can probably make it, and then just kind of like see where you can take it from there. Really, do a fresh take on it. So that's X-Men Apocalypse. Well,
we gave that far more time than it deserved.
I know. Probably largely the fact that I was probably eating dinner. What's next? What's next?
Star Trek Beyond was the next one I saw. This was.
Oh no! Well, what was out before? There was there. Oh, I'm sure there was another one.
Did you see Ghostbusters? Because I didn't.
I did see Ghostbusters.
Okay.
Now, what was your feelings towards? Were you just kind of indifferent?
Yeah, I think that describes it better than anything else. A few things I thought I was a man of the world, but there have been a few things in the last year that have just shocked even me. I'm thinking of the Donald Trumps of this world, and some of the crimes we've seen around the world with shootings and all the rest of it, and just the infinite capacity for people to be complete fucking bastards. And the whole thing around Ghostbusters made me embarrassed to be any kind of nerdy fanboy, because, I mean, firstly, from a personal point of view, I will never say anything against the original Ghostbusters. So what I'm about to say must not be interpreted as criticism. Ghostbusters didn't follow me into adulthood at all. For no other reason than it just didn't. I watched it when I was about 21. I tried again in my 20s.
It wasn't your thing.
I loved it at the time. I was so excited. I saw it at the cinema. I was really excited by it, and I loved it. As an adult, I don't sit and pick fault with it. It just doesn't do anything for me. Whereas something like Back to the Future followed me into adulthood. The Star Wars films did. The Superman films did. Plenty of stuff from that era of a similar tone came with me, but Ghostbusters didn't. But it's not meant as a criticism of the film at all. I've got really nothing to say about it either way. I don't lionize it as some bit of genius, but I don't think it's a bad film at all. It just didn't come with me. So when they talked about rebooting, I couldn't get excited in that, like, oh, it's one of my childhood films coming back. But nor could I get angry because it's a sacred cow to me. It isn't. And I just think it's easy to knock the anger about remakes until it's a remake of something you love. And then you do sort of see why people feel that way. But there was no excuse for the abuse the actresses in this film took on social media. There was no excuse for the campaign trying to ruin the film. There was no excuse for all the, it's feminism run riot bullshit that came around it. The fact is, it's a remake of a film, sort of, or a reimagining, or whatever you want to call it. And frankly, one of the original Ghostbusters is dead. And the rest of them, one was added very late in the film anyway, if you think of the original. So he's not one of the stars in that respect. So you're left with Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray. Dan Aykroyd has always wanted to do another one. Fair enough. Bill Murray doesn't. And frankly...
And Bill Murray has a bigger part in the remake. It's just kind of funny. He's kind of like an extended cameo, but,
I think I just think there's several facets to this. Firstly, it's just people's infinite capacity to be complete pricks, but it's also the fact that there's a bit of a rewriting of history here, because even if you consider Ghostbusters the greatest film of all time, which I don't, but I'll give the fans of it that pass, that they think it's genius to that degree, fine. But what is it you want? Do you want them never to be made again? Okay, that's a fair point of view, but that's not the way of the world we get remakes. Do you want it remade with all men? Well, what does it matter? What's the difference?
Yeah.
What does it matter if it's men or women? I saw memes where it said, these should have been the Ghostbusters, and it was like Chris Pratt and some others. And I was just like, oh, how's that?
That's social media for you. I mean, look, to play the social gender card.
Just to finish the point a minute.
Okay.
So what does that leave? You want it remade with the original cast, presumably, if you want it remade at all. Well, let's be serious here. We're 32 years on. What great films have any of them done recently? What great films has Ivan Reitman directed lately? And quite aside from that, it's not like they didn't have a go at making another one. And people seem to have forgotten Ghostbusters too. And whilst I'm sure it's got its defenders,
Yeah, it's
let's
not
be
that.
blunt,
Yeah.
it's not very good. Even if you like it, it's not as good as the original. Would they really do any better in 2016? So I don't understand it. I think, and I'm not a great one for jumping on bandwagons, but I think it's flat out fucking nasty sexism, pure and simple.
See, I kind of missed, probably because I had better things to be getting on with at the time. But I missed the flat out nastiness that you're saying here. I mean, I didn't see that. I mean, the only things I saw with people. I think I saw someone say they're going to boycott it just because they're just sick of remakes, you know. And it's,
Now there was all sorts going on online trying to.
I understand.
But not only that, one of the actresses. I mean, I forget the lineup now, but is one of the actresses black?
Yeah.
Yeah, she took a ton of abuse on Twitter.
I remember that because it kind of it happened when I got back from my holidays, and yeah, I mean that wasn't right. I mean, well, I think it sort of stemmed from someone kind of copied her account and subtweeted it. So
Yeah.
it was like it was kind of plagiarism, basically. Basically, she was saying something. So
I think the bottom line is I'm in some respects the wrong person to ask because I'm not a Ghostbusters fan.
no,
But I'm in some respects the right person to ask because I'm not a Ghostbusters fan.
you take an objective look at it.
I'm not irrational about any of this. Do I like remakes all the time? Not particularly, but it's just a fucking film. Chill out. And frankly, if you stick Chris Pratt in it doing a vague impression of Bill Murray from 1984, then frankly you've done more to slaughter a sacred cow than if you reimagined it with something different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with that. I mean, for starters, if you're going to be serious about the politics of the gender, if you're going to be progressive with that, I was always for, well, let's have male and female Ghostbusters working together because surely that evokes equality. That shows, both sexes working together, being part of a team. Being part, rather than kind of like switch. I mean, when it was announced, it wasn't like, I mean, I was a bit, oh, for fuck's sake, but it wasn't for the fact that they're female. It was on the fact that, well, that's a bit of a lazy twist. If that's all you got going for it, it's like, well, Ghostbusters, but this time they're chicks. It just feels like, all right then. But then it was announced that it was Paul Feig doing it. Now, in a twisted universe where it was actually announced that Paul Feig was doing a Ghostbusters film before anything else was announced, Paul Feig was going to do a Ghostbusters film. I think the announcement that there would have been an all-female cast wouldn't have been that shocking. In fact, I don't think it would be that much controversial. I think the fact that when it was announced it was an all-female Ghostbusters cast, it sent like this kind of shockwave, and it kind of rustled up like the really pro-feminists and the people really really didn't want the pressures about Ghostbusters, didn't want it to see remade, and of course there were probably a few sexists out there, okay, and it just kind of stirred this kind of like whirlwind of this no, I don't want to see it being remade, but you're sexist if you don't. Oh, and of course got like actual sexist, just not helping the issue and kind of like and getting involved.
It's the degree of it, though.
And I think
I don't want to go.
I think it's worked up a frenzy. I think that's what kind of happened.
The general not wanting a Ghostbusters remake, I can kind of understand it. If it's an important part of your childhood, I think you got to put it in perspective that these things happen. But okay, I get that. But the degree of backlash was nothing short of ridiculous. And yeah, it at times it just didn't feel like a species I wanted to be part of.
It's just social media for you. It's people being really angry and aggressive.
Just fucking grow up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And there are little girls out there now who've got something that spoke to them. and that just gets fucking forgotten.
Okay, well, I mean, that is probably the one positive thing I would have to say about Ghostbusters, the remake.
I think the point is, though, let's forget that for a second.
Yeah.
More importantly, what was the film like? I didn't see it.
Yeah, you didn't see it. Okay, I watched it. Now, I started to kind of build up. I was actually start looking forward to this because I kind of like Paul Feig films. You know, the fact they're all female Ghostbusters, I was like, you know what, fine. I mean, I picked.
It's happening now. Let's see what we can get out of it.
I picked up on it.
Yeah.
If you ask me personally, I'd rather have male and female because that just seems more logical, you know. And to be honest, I think had they kind of did honestly reboot it, I think we would have had at least one female Ghostbuster in there. Anyway, possibly it might depend who was doing it. If it was like Seth Rogen, possibly not. But then we might have done. Who knows? But anyway, I was like, okay, well, all I need this to be is funny. You know, that's all I actually wanted it to be. You know, it doesn't need to be because like the original Ghostbusters. I know what you're saying, and I do have some ties. I mean, I love the car scene.
I'm not actually saying anything against it.
Yeah. No. I mean,
it just doesn't touch me in any way now.
I know because I'm what I'm about to say is like, you know, the film itself isn't, you know, it's a kind of an odd thing because the film itself, there isn't much to it. You know, I mean, the film is basically shot like a drama / horror film. It's not shot like a comedy at all. And the main comedic element in it is basically Bill Murray being Bill Murray. You know, in that way that only Bill Murray can do, which is basically...
Yeah, there was a period in his career where I don't know how much was ad-libbed and how much wasn't.
Yeah.
But a lot of it comes across like they just rolled the camera and see what happens.
And it's that thing that Bill Murray does where he just acts like a total jackass, like a sleazy, like the sort of literally sort of guy you probably want to hate, but you can't help but just like him because he's Bill Murray. He's like the exception to the rule. He's just charming with it. And it's just funny.
But Bill Murray's like Harrison Ford in that I only want him there if he wants to be there.
Yeah.
Because an unmotivated Bill Murray is like an unmotivated Harrison Ford.
Where he's just like...
Yeah, that's it. So, had he wanted to do Ghostbusters again, I do wonder what would have happened. Had they announced Ghostbusters with the original crew, nothing had happened to Harold Ramis, and it had been scheduled for release this year.
I don't know. It depends how they
I wonder if we
it.
would have got a lot of... Well, that would be a disaster. They're a bunch of old fucking men.
I know, because times were ticking on by then. So it's like, I don't know. So, yeah. So I went in, sat down, was kind of looking forward to it, and I couldn't muster any laughter for any of the jokes it was trying to tell. I thought, I mean, the only thing I thought was that made me kind of like snigger, and I thought I had some sort of comedic value was Kate McKinnon. In this kind of like being like a slightly oddball, which later I found out, there was, apparently the character was a lesbian because she's a lesbian in it. Because I was like, what, really? I'd never got any of that in the film, but okay. But yeah, she's.
I don't know how you can say. Well, not you, but I don't know how anyone can say that when it's not in the film.
Well,
she's a lesbian.
I've seen it.
That might as well be fucking fanfic if it's not in the film.
I've seen it once, so I can't obviously pick out certain things.
No, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean,
if the backstory she's a lesbian, well, if it's not in the film, then
I think it was like they put it down to like
it's apocryphal.
They didn't highlight it, but it was down to certain moments, and I think a few people picked up on it and saying, "Oh, look," So I can't really speak to it. It was just something. It was just something I read, which was like another thing. I thought Chris Hemsworth. I really wanted to find it funny because I thought the idea of like of gender reversing were making.
It's a cracking idea that he's a dumb blonde.
Yeah, and it was just too. It was beyond mentally retarded. It's like It's like
this guy would not function in society or get a job.
No,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it was like stupid joke, like how like. It was beyond even that. It was just like none of this make any contextual sense to anything. You just get Chris Hemsworth saying a bunch of random stuff that sounds silly, essentially, and it's like, well, I'm sorry, this isn't funny, and the cast were all likable. I wanted to like it more than I did. But all the jokes just fell flat for me, and I don't know what happened. It kind of became like, I don't know what has happened by accident because it became kind of like no feminist argument, but it kind of became like this is like a very pro-feminist film, being the fact that all the heroes are chicks. Oh, okay, obviously, but there's no good female male character in it at all. It's either A, a moron or up against them, or like basically villains. The villain's like kind of like a socially neglected bully guy who's who's connected to the spiritual world, managed to make a machine. It's just like going to go like, well, fuck humanity. And I was like, really? I mean, if we're going to have like the gender debate, and this is very pro-feminist in the most negative sense, if you ask me. It's just kind of like going, yeah, well, fuck you, man. But all that would be fine. I wouldn't have a problem with that if it made me laugh, and it just didn't. It was just kind of like probably one of the biggest disappointments of the year, and I kind of felt a little bit like there was a lot of, because of what happened, as you say, with all the hostility. It had like pre-release that people are compensating with the reviews, saying like, oh yeah, but it's actually it's like it's not perfect, but but it's funny. Oh, it's it's big enough to what was better was, or maybe I just wasn't getting the joke.
I think the sad thing with anything like that is, if it is indeed genuinely not that good.
The sad truth is, it is just another bland remake.
I think the sad thing with that is, it'll end up making those fucking pigs out there feel vindicated. Do you know what I mean? I would have liked it to have been good just for that.
Yeah.
But there you go. So I sat kind of detached from it all. I had no dog in the game either way, but I did end up sort of quietly, not enough to want to go and see it, but I did end up kind of quietly rooting for it just because of the poison they took. Nobody deserves that. Even if you're remaking Citizen Kane or It's a Wonderful Life, nobody deserves that.
Yeah. I agree. I think it was one of the weird things that it just got caught in a whirlwind of shit. I think what happened. I think it kind of probably spurred on by the media a little bit too much.
There is no equivalent the other way round either. I mean, all these like meninists out there complaining that women and bloody women. It's just bullshit because, like, frankly, our gender still gets a really fucking easy ride because there is no equivalent the other way round for what happened to those women trying to just remake a film to entertain people with.
Yeah, but they're okay though.
I'm sure they'll get over it.
Most of them are like successful in their own right.
Yeah, I know. But they're still people, and particularly the black lady taking a load of abuse on Twitter.
I know, but she didn't help herself. God bless her by by just spurring on, going, just turn off Twitter. At the end of the day, is she like the first person to get like hate mail?
No, she's not.
So it's just it's like if you got abuse from Twitter, you just tell them to fuck off or block them. Or report it, or if it's getting that bad, you're like, oh, well, fuck off, I just won't look at my phone, But instead, she was like, I sound like I'm bashing her now, but what I'm saying is she didn't help herself by keep tweeting, going like, oh my god, basically crying out to the world, and then you know what I mean, just spurring on the trolls, so to speak,
Yeah, okay.
So, but there we are. So that's Ghostbusters, yeah.
So in summary, women are dodgy.
No, women are lovely. So, well, most.
Apart from the dodgy men.
Yes. But they're playing dodgy men out, So, fair's fair. So what
Chris is into equality, men are dodgy.
Yeah. I'm all about equality. That's all I'm about. So
that's why he's dating Robert Darby, despite being heterosexual. It's only fair.
I like to mix it up.
It's only fair.
The best of both worlds,
Yeah.
The rough, the smooth. So Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah, very low expectations. 3 or 4 months out from this film, the Again, you can't judge everything by trailers, but the first trailer was poor. Into Darkness had been bad, and obviously, I don't know when it was announced. No, it was announced before the trailers to this. We knew it's coming back to TV. Now, at the time of recording, we haven't seen what the output of that is. But certainly, we're now in a situation where we've got this film series and an alternate timeline that so far has been as good as bits of it have been. At a headline level, it's a bit dumb, and it's in an alternate timeline, and it's very action heavy. And then we're hearing it's coming back to telly, and then they throw out the script and director, which is a good thing because it was Orsi, Roberto Orsi. I don't want him to be involved in anything I care about.
What else has he written apart from the Star Trek?
Transformers and Amazing Spider-Man 2 and hacks. But
I kind of like Spider-Man 2, but yeah.
Its script is the worst thing about it, though. Just listen to anything coming out of Electro's mouth. But anyway,
yeah,
it's not a very good film. But anyway, the point is, I was quite happy with the change. But of course, we've got the 50th anniversary of Star Trek this year, so there was absolutely no way they were going to miss this summer. And by the time, and they already know Star Wars and everything else comes out in the autumn, or it's winter, in fact. So they weren't going to go head to head with that. So they had to hit the summer. And they were writing at breakneck speed. They gave it to Simon Pegg and another guy, Doug Young, I think he's called. He's in the film in a cameo. He's actually Sulu's partner in the film. And so my expectations were understandably not high. I'm satisfied enough with what we got. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
And as much as that sounds like damning it with faint praise, I suppose it is. Because I didn't think it was great.
But you hated the last film, though.
But I hated Into Darkness. I still like 2009 more. And this does feel like a very, very high-budget TV show. I mean, its closest equivalent as a film in the film series is probably Insurrection, which is the most TV episode of any of the films.
Yeah.
I've still got concerns about Star Trek in general in that they're throwing huge budgets at films that have never taken big box office. Star Trek never has. It's not that big. Not in cinematic terms, anyway. I mean, it's nowhere near as big as Bond, for example. It isn't. But the end result was decent, as I say, a bit like a TV show in a lot of ways. I still kind of like this cast with some reservations. I thought Pine's growing into the role quite nicely. It's good, and if that's damning it with faint praise, so be it. It's good.
Yeah, I liked Pine. I think I've always liked Pine's role though. But I thought the film did a really good job at giving everyone something to do. I read reviews saying that poor old Anton Yelchin, they didn't give him anything to do. Yeah. Obviously, Anton Yelchin died between the time the film wrapped and the release of the film. So I don't know if it's because I was looking out for him more because of what happened, but I thought he had plenty to do. I mean, he was at Kirk's side for a lot of the film. Mm. I thought they split them off into groups, so we finally got some of Bones and Spock together, which is a dynamic that always works whoever plays the parts, because the fundamental characters spar off each other quite nicely. Yeah.
Yeah,
it was a nice change. You got you say Bones and Spock. You had Kirk and Chekhov, which was we don't necessarily think to put them together, but it was kind of this is kind of nice, because of his character. It was kind of like his
I know. And
sidekick.
Then you put Scotty with the new lady, which makes sense because he is the most comedic and sort of fish out of water of all of them,
and makes sense because she builds stuff as well, so it kind of makes sense to put them two together.
Yeah, they're a bit kindred spirit. I think that the issues I have are minor. I still think, and even down to the choice of director here, although Justin Lin did a very good job, I have to say, but the hiring of him is a bit of a statement of intent that they've seen how the Fast franchise has started to gross under his watch. And I think they want that for Star Trek, and I don't think Star Trek will ever be that.
Yeah.
I think it kind of still carries a little bit of a stigma.
I think Justin Lin has always been a Star Trek fan as well.
Yes, he has. In fact, the Franklin, the ship, the Franklin, is named after his dad, Frank Lin.
Oh, right.
Yeah. No,
that's a little fun fact there for you.
But he used to That's fun, folks. He used to watch it with his dad, and I think it comes through. I think there is a love for the characters there. I've been taken a little bit aback because we're doing Star Trek on our other podcast at the moment, and I've been a little bit taken aback by the virulence of the hatred of a lot of fans for this timeline. Given it's a series all about like reaching out and tolerance and everything else, I've seen a lot of closed-mindedness. It isn't really my Trek. TNG's my Trek, really. But Into Darkness aside, it's done more good than harm as a series, and it's likable enough. And the way this, you might argue about time travel and the way it's done, but the way this timeline embraces itself is to say your Star Trek still exists. So nothing about the Trek you love is invalidated by any of this. And it's actually closer to the Star Trek you love than you would acknowledge when you watch this film.
I thought it was just a decent job. I thought Idris Elba again wasn't as good as he was in Jungle Book. Not his fault. I don't think he was given much to do. I think
he wasn't given enough to do.
I
think he was the big sign this film had been a bit rushed.
I think it's kind of thing because when they reveal his character, I would have thought it would have played off better had they pulled that twist early on, and then we could just develop that more. You know, because by the time it's revealed, it was just like, oh right, and then we get to the final climax, and you know, Kirk fights him, and then done. You know, we're out. I think would have played if like literally the scene after he's first introduced, we kind of figured out that of who he really is, shall we say? I mean, I won't do the spoiler just yet. But I think that was like the weakest part. I do think they balanced the characters right. I know Uhura and Sulu didn't get much to do, but with a crew that big, you're not going to give everyone to do on every film. So,
no, and I could tell Justin Lin was a Star Trek fan, and maybe I'm overreaching here, but he says to him something like, "Do you know how to fly this thing?" And Sulu's like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I watched The Undiscovered Country the other day, and George Takei on the bridge of the Excelsior turns and says that exact line, and I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure that's a direct reference.
It probably would be.
So they seem to know what they're doing. They seem to know what they're watching. I'm quite happy for them to do more in this timeline.
I like how they
cut the budget and stop trying to make $1 billion, because you're not going to do it.
I like how they paint the characters positively as well. You know, like even Sulu is like a badass in his own way. He's like, you know, he's good at what he does, and it has always been kind of very sort of dynamic in that. I thought it was generally okay. I mean, I was a bit they're destroying the Enterprise again, but I think I heard it with interviewed like sort of the filmmakers on the podcast. I think it was the Empire one, and they were talking, and the way they were talking about more about like Kirk's journey and how he, in a way, I kind of felt like they were kind of like washing the sins of the last film. To kind of like, it was almost like a rebirth of the series, kind of make so it kind of like Kirk had to lose the Enterprise to find out what it really means to him, for, you know,
reborn with a new ship.
Yeah,
I think as well,
and also find out that it's not the ship, it's not necessarily the ship, it's the crew, and it's like it's
but
the
there
crew
are also
what makes
little things like design. I mean, that ship, the bridge is way too bright. I mean, I'm not saying it should look like a funeral home by any stretch of the imagination, but It only occurred to me, if you sat on that bridge for an 8-hour working day, you'd have a fucking splitting headache at the end of it. So that needs a bit of toning down. There's bits in the design of that Enterprise, not enough to get me mad with rage or anything, but enough that, like, yeah, I wish they could change that. So I don't really give a shit. They've replaced the Enterprise, so be it. But when you think about it, the first film is all about his destiny, and, you know, he signs up on a bit of a dare. And all the references in the film are back to that. And they skip Into Darkness, which is very wise, because Into Darkness made starships obsolete and cured death. You know, the stakes wouldn't be very high if you didn't ignore that film. So, like it or hate it, it's not necessary.
It feels more like the real predecessor to the first one, really.
It certainly does feel like the next film. I will probably in the future only really watch those two. and it's not... I do loathe Into Darkness, there's no doubt. But I think even if I didn't, even if I was like tolerating of it, this film has kind of made it a bit unnecessary.
Well, there's not much that happens other than like Pike dying.
Yeah, which I thought was a shame, but there you go.
Yeah, which they could have saved. It's not much.
Mind you, his death scene was fantastic.
They've achieved actually nothing really in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I think in all the films so far, they've kind of wasted time, and even this feels like a bit of fucking shore leave in a strange kind of way.
They destroyed San Francisco, I suppose and London.
Yes, well done, team. The films are fun.
I've never really got kind of bored or sick of seeing like cities getting destroyed in blockbusters. But when we watched it Into Darkness not so long ago, when it came to that bit, and I was like, "This is a bit unnecessary, really, isn't it?"
Yeah, it's just the other thing as well is if you know a bit about Roberto Orsi and his politics and stuff, all his stupid conspiracy theory bullshit is in the script as well. He's one of these 9/11
was a inside job.
He's an absolute fucking wanker, and he's really not that talented. Now he's got to have more talent than me because he's making it in that career. But the fact is, there hasn't been a single fucking script those guys have come up with that I haven't thought is shit, and that is including the 2009 Star Trek film, which I really really like, but it's good in spite of itself. And so I'm glad they're nothing to do with it now. And he's brought a light tone to it. And what Simon Pegg's tried to do with this film is not reinvent the world. They've just told a decent story over a couple of hours. It ain't too long. It's pretty decent.
And fair play to Simon Pegg. I mean, I know he's been... He tends to come across as a bit of a pretentious prick nowadays. But I think he does a really good job as Scotty in the series in general, I think. I think he fits the bill quite well. I mean, he does say Lassie too much in this.
Yeah.
It's like, can you not find another word? Can you just not say it?
The other thing is, I was watching The Trouble with Tribbles the other day, and because we're obviously prepping for our other podcast, and the original series, Scotty was a bit of a fucking bruiser, actually. So he's probably the biggest departure from the original timeline equivalent. But I think they all play together quite nicely. And Pine finally has a bit of stillness in the chair. I noticed it when the Franklin was taken off, and I thought, yeah, you actually look like the captain, finally.
What was it that didn't sell you about Pine before?
I don't know if the writers were pandering to it or it was just a coincidence, but I felt in the first two films they were having to keep him out of the chair, because he doesn't look like the captain, so they don't leave him in the chair very often. He looks like a boy sent to do a man's job. But in this film, the Franklin's taken off, and he doesn't look a lot older. Although his hair's a bit different, but he doesn't look a lot older. But something about him sat in that chair as that craft was taken off. There was a stillness to him. And I thought, yes, you're actually the captain now.
I'm the captain now.
And he actually took the role well. I thought his story was good. I thought his story was interesting. And finally, I felt like...
Do you think he plays actually Kirk, like the character Kirk?
Well, I'm willing to give it the pass that it's a different Kirk anyway. Very different upbringing, don't forget. His father dies in this timeline, doesn't in the original. The original Kirk was quite studious at the academy. This one was a drunken wastrel till Pike got hold of him. I do have some problems when we review the series and we get to things like the Kobayashi Maru and stuff. I don't like the way they do that. But I just thought in the first two
it plays
films,
out differently in the,
I just thought he was far too lightweight in the role, and I just wished like they got it the wrong way around.
Too
Chris
immature?
Hemsworth. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just didn't see him as a captain. Some of that was the script because he was too young and promoted straight to captain and everything else. But I just couldn't see him in the role. And when I thought about him, and you don't see it represented in the films at all, but at some point he must have his senior staff around a table, like Picard style, for like a conference on something. And I can't see Chris Pine's Kirk doing that. But I can now. He's growing into the role. That's all I can say. And they're all growing into their parts. It's the third time round with it. So, yeah, I wouldn't say it's great, but I would say I enjoyed it. It's good.
Okay. And last, but no, I think this is the last one, Suicide Squad?
No, we've skipped Jason Bourne.
Oh, shit, Jason Bourne. Well, maybe that's a... maybe...
We couldn't remember him, and he went missing.
You know his name. We forgot it.
It's David Webb. Yeah, what did you think?
Okay. I've kind of liked, but I've never been huge on the Bourne films. I like them. I think I like the Greengrass ones more, just because I know how he handles action well using shaky cam. He always comes across as quite magnetic. I thought Legacy got a bit of an undeserved kicking. I thought, but I enjoyed that. Okay. But this one, I thought was a decent action film, but was pretty dumb pretending to be serious. I think because the stigma with the Bourne films is they come across as quite intelligent. They try to be almost kind of like smart, up to beat with the kind of like real world with conspiracy and spies, and I think this had a very generic, dumb action movie plot, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because you know me, I like my action films, and I don't mind a dumb fucking plot.
You kept that quiet.
Yeah, I don't mind a dumb fucking plot when I come across one.
I do from this series. I think this film in almost any other franchise would have been okay.
Yeah,
but it hews very close to the ones that came before in style and even characters. I mean, what's Alice Vikander if not basically the modern Pamela Landy? And they're all kind of analogues of things we've seen before.
Well,
but it was all a little bit dumber.
Yeah, I mean, I just felt like watching, like, I'm pretty sure I've seen the same level of plot in a straight to video video like action film. There's nothing special about the plot when you dissect it. In fact, it's pretty tired. Like, it repeats the same things that we've already seen before. Like,
it felt like someone opened a time capsule from 2004.
Yeah. And
just inserted a few modern references, like mentioning Edward Snowden occasionally, which is how I keep you expect us to talk so hip and current. And yeah, I mention Edward Snowden every few weeks. But it's little things like an awful lot of the plot information was imparted to us by somebody reading it off a screen. And Alice Vikander reads because I can't remember what her character's called. She reads like a psychiatrist's evaluation of Jason Bourne.
Her accent was a little bit dodgy.
I don't remember, is the honest truth. Was it poor?
I don't know. I was trying to picture it. I'm not quite sure whether it was just she was
Where's
doing,
she meant to be
she was
from?
doing really something quite specific from a particular type of place.
Yeah.
Or it was just like a little bit. I'm not sure where you are with this.
Honestly, I don't remember if it was good, bad, or indifferent. But I do remember that she reads this detail about him, and then uses it directly as an argument to her boss. We can bring him in. And I'm thinking, well, there's two things wrong with that. Firstly, it's show don't tell, and we've just literally been told. But also, we've been told twice because as a viewer, we've read along with her reading it, and then we've heard her say it. I didn't quite buy where Bourne was in life. I can't really see him as a bare knuckle boxer for a living.
I see him more rather like trying to do. I see him stacking crates, like doing something like that, something quite sort of passive.
Something off the grid, like stacking shelves, even.
Yeah.
Or more likely a labourer on a building site or something.
Moving from place to place, job to job kind of thing.
Yeah. And trying not to be caught by Mr. McGee. Yeah.
Mr. Tommy Lee.
I think that... So I didn't buy where he was in life. And the other thing is the whole thing had a bit of a feel of a retrofit, because have we ever heard his dad mentioned at all in any of the previous films?
Well, this is
yet he's mentioned as the founder of Treadstone, which is mentioned in all 4 of the previous films, including Legacy, I think. And so I think part of the problem is, had this come out in 2010, let's say, normal sort of release schedule, 2-3 years, but long enough down the line that the circumstances in his life may have changed, I'd look at it and say, well, it's a step down, but it would feel part of the same series. But I think there's something about coming back after 9 years that you think, to draw them back to this series, they've got to have a really good idea. Yeah. And I kind of felt like they didn't.
It kind of felt like it was for money. Which is kind of sad, because you do think that Damon and Greengrass wouldn't do that, but all
the beats feel the same, but I don't buy the motivations in the same way. And I think people who know tech, I recognised a few of them just from the little I know, but people who know a bit more about tech than me were saying, well, that doesn't make sense and that doesn't make sense, in a way that perhaps the originals weren't as far off base. And I do wonder that it was Paul Greengrass's birthday in the last few days, and he's like 61 now. Well, that means he was kind of in his 40s when he started making these. They're all a lot older. They're all a bit out of touch, and I do wonder if they've really got anything left to say about a series that wasn't from the world we live in now. It was from the Bush era. So I don't know if it really fits.
Yeah,
I'm making it sound like it was awful. It was entertaining enough.
I think what I say, I thought structurally and idea-wise it was pretty weak and poor, but the action was great as ever. I think if you watch it for anything, watch it for the action scenes, because I think the action and the pacing. There's nothing wrong with Greengrass's direction.
Well, it's paced as well as the previous films are paced, in my opinion. It's just the devil's in the detail.
Yeah.
The devil's in the detail of, well, they found out information in a similar way at a similar point in previous films, but this time they're literally reading it off a screen, for example.
It just feels a bit weak,
All the motivations aren't quite there, but in terms of beat for beat, it's structured like any of the other Bourne films, and if you enjoyed them, you'll probably get on all right with this. But it is the weakest of the Matt Damon entries, without any question.
It's I think when you've got like Tommy Jones introduced as basically the new bad, and of course like it's always been him all along. It's always been like his idea, even though we've never seen or heard of him. Same goes for his dad, and of course like you got like Vincent Cassel, who's the guy who killed Bourne's dad, as well, to like make it all personal. I just like this is not believable, you can you buy the fact that Vince Cassel had beef with Bourne because he blew his cover when he did what he did in the previous films. You can kind of go, all right, well, he's got some beef. That's all we kind of need. We don't need, other than the fact that he's a shady government assassin doing his job, being told to order to kill Bourne, and that's all you need. That's all we need,
I just think the whole thing was a little bit confused about its reason for being.
Yeah.
But it's not a bad film. You look at it on Rotten Tomatoes and it's on about, 56% or something. It is certified rotten, if you like.
Okay.
And I went to see it thinking, oh God, this could be a bit of a train wreck. Because there's a lot of goodwill towards this series. So a rating that low suggests they've really been pissed off. Frank, it's okay.
And that's probably it. They maybe expected too much, and they've not got what they want.
I think they would have had a right to expect a bit smarter than this. But it's okay. But yeah, we would have hoped for more than okay after the triumphant. It's a bit like the last indie film, the triumphant return of all the original crew after all these years, and they've produced this. And it's all right. Okay.
At least it's more entertaining than Indy 4.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. It's better than Indiana Jones 4, I promise.
So we're finally on to Suicide Squad.
Yeah, we've done nothing but moan during this show, really, haven't we?
I know we've had.
We said some nice things about Jungle Book and a little bit about Captain America, but it was damn with faint praise.
You mentioned Eddie the Eagle before, didn't you?
Yeah, Eddie the Eagle's the only other film I've seen this summer. I've had quite a quiet summer in a lot of ways. I saw it just before it left cinemas. I ummed and ahed about it. Reviews were all right. I went to see it. It's okay.
Okay.
In fact, it's better than okay in places. But yeah, that is an example of a film where all the best bits are in the trailer.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, but
Nothing
it stretches out. It's likable though, and he's likable, although he's playing him as a bit of a cartoon. It's Taron Egerton from Kingsman.
Yeah.
Playing him, and it's all right. But
I love Kingsman though.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman's in it as his coach. Hugh Jackman's probably MVP in this film. Best thing in it.
It's Hugh Jackman probably being Hugh Jackman, isn't it? Probably being like
really kind of likable, and yeah, Kingsman's better. But I don't think that's a surprise. The sort of pantomime villainry of like the British Olympic Association's a bit over the top. Because I don't know if this is meant to be real or not. I don't know if this is like an imagining, like The Social Network was.
Yeah, it is. I think it's more fantastical version of
right. Because I know these things get exaggerated, but frankly, this is the Olympic Committee have got nothing better to do with their time than stop Eddie the Eagle embarrassing Britain by going to the Olympics. And I don't imagine that's the case. And we're talking about for the Winter Olympics when we win fuck all anyway. It's certainly in that era. I know we've won skeleton and stuff like that in the interim, but back in those days, we'd go off to the Olympics, and post Torval and Dean, we won nothing, and our best finisher would be 8th in the downhill skiing or something. We're not a winter sports nation, so I find it hard to believe that they would be desperate for Eddie the Eagle not to go. But if you if you took it as genuine and all real, the guys. Persistence is kind of sweet.
Is it the kind of film that goes well down on a Sunday afternoon with a cup of tea and a slice of cake?
And the Wurzel Gummidge album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to reference that, but that was just like...
It's not a romantic film, but at the same time it would be quite sweet for a date.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of light and fun. And then you can then you can dance with her to your Wurzel Gummidge album. Yeah.
Gets all the ladies.
Yeah.
Is there any other films that stood out for you over the summer, or was that basically
I think that's about it for me. It's been pretty weak this year actually, but again, there's no apocalyptic. My God, Hollywood's over. These things ebb and flow. You've only got to look at Oscar season. Some years the field looks fierce and strong. Other years it's like, well, none of these are going to endure. I think it's just unfortunate that. Had X-Men been as good as, say, First Class was, and Batman v Superman as good as, say, Iron Man was, you know what I mean? A few of these films being a bit better than they were, and we'd be looking at a really good summer. I think the only concern I've got is not that Hollywood can't turn out decent product, because they can and do, but I'm hearing more and more stories, and maybe it's because the films have failed, of really chaotic productions. And I don't know if something's broken in the way films are made now, because we're getting very rushed scripts and scripts that don't make sense. And when we get on the Suicide Squad in a minute, there's about 6 different cuts of the film out there somewhere. And I do wonder if it's getting ever harder to get any kind of vision on the screen without it being stamped on. But I think without over-egging that, things ebb and flow. Next summer might be brilliant.
I think we got like tons of money. Studio had to get nervous and want to make the best possible hit possible. Not necessarily the best possible film, best possible hit. They want the money back. So things get like essentially you get too many cooks in the kitchen, and I think it kind of ruins the broth. True to say. I think that generally what happened. I think it kind of happens with Warner Bros. With Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. Really. I mean, I've always given credit to Warner Brothers for taking like the anti-Marvel route and go like, okay, well, Marvel have relatively.
It's no point in just doing another Marvel.
Yeah.
Because all you're going to get is like 5 or 6 Marvel Cinematic Universe films a year, effectively. If they want to go a bit more serious and darker, fine.
I always gave them the benefit of being like, well, we're gonna give like the directors full creative control to make the films that they want. Now, the films might not match up properly, might be a bit messy, might be a bit of a gamble, but at least it'd be different to the Marvel product. And the films themselves could potentially, on an individual basis, be better. And I don't think Warner Bros. Doing that. They're kind of breaking their promises.
Well, I said that earlier. I stand by what I said on our other show, that what Marvel are doing is tremendous
Quality
in a lot of ways. But at the same time, the mediocrity on average of the films is hiding in plain sight.
Well, it's quality control. But
none of it's bad.
Emphasis on control. It's controlled quality. You know, we are getting quality, but it is under like a template. It's under like a degree, a degree of direction. There's not much breathing room for much creativity to make it that extra bit special. Now Warner Brothers could do that. They could be like, okay, well that's Marvel's thing. We can break away from that and be.
I'm now at the point. See, none of us are experts. We haven't made films and all the rest of it. But like, we're all reasonably intelligent people who have been around a lot of film.
Speak for yourself.
And we
are.
Sorry, you're not reasonably intelligent. I'm sorry, Chris. But I've had a view all the way along about what I think they're doing wrong and all the rest of it. I'm now at the point I don't know. Because I don't know how they fix where they've gone wrong now. Let's talk about Suicide Squad for a bit. What did you think of it?
Okay, well, there's no two ways about it. I think this film got a little bit of a backlash. Kind of like I do think the critics are like kind of rubbing their hands with glee to kind of beat like the DC over their head, Warner Bros. DC over their head, like probably sort of just wait to trash this film. And I mean, I know the film is a bit of a mess. Well, I say a bit. It is a mess. But it's an enjoyable one. There are things in it that I like, that are better, that put it above Batman v Superman, in my opinion. I think what's kind of frustrating for me is I think Suicide Squad is on the verge of being like a really good film. I mean, I kind of see, when I see Suicide Squad, I can kind of go, right, if it just did this and it just did this, and if they took a slightly different approach with the plot, it would work really, really well, and I think we'd have a really good film. But it doesn't, and it kind of like fumbles on itself. But there are ingredients in it that I really like. So I think, on a whole, I really enjoy it. But I can't say it's a particularly good film. So when people say they really like it, I can kind of go with it. When people say, oh, I really hated it, I can't really disagree with them. Because...
Yeah, that's about where I am on Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Like, it's really good and really awful.
Yeah.
I thought, in its defense, it had, maybe it's because it's got Will Smith and Margot Robbie in it, I don't know, but
I love Margot Robbie.
The dialogue felt not only what they were saying, although definitely what they were saying, but also how they were saying it was all so much more naturalistic. Everything in Batman versus Superman sounded forced and stilted and badly delivered and unnatural and everything. Everything in this had a bit of a flow to it. I thought the casting was good for what I know of some of the characters. I don't know them all. Joel Kinnaman's character was supposed to be Tom Hardy. He pulled out. I think that might have been a little bit better, but Joel Kinnaman was fine.
I thought he did really good. I thought it was like because the
Yeah, he did, but I
guy.
can picture Tom Hardy in that role, and he would have elevated it even further. I think.
What do you think he would have done though? Would you be kind of like give like the solid
screen presence? Simple as that.
Yeah.
And not only that, I don't care what superpowers you've got. Tom Hardy convinces you and kick your ass. Whereas, I could imagine Tom Hardy bossing these guys around. I'm not as convinced by this guy, but he does fine. Jay Courtney is actually pretty good in this. That's breaking news for anyone who's seen anything else he's ever done.
He's good in Jack Reacher.
Yeah, he's fine in Jack Reacher, to be fair. But I mean, he has been poorly served by his choices and the material. And
I mean, it's even surprising the fact that he's got this, like no character, literally. Like, I couldn't even tell you what his character was, and yet he was still actually quite.
I mean, that's the fundamental problem with the film. That they're saying that, well, Superman, we were lucky because he shared our values. Wherever they fucking learnt that based on the first two films. I don't know. But all right, he shared our values. He's a good guy, apart from all the murder and shit. Fine. But they're saying, well, we could get others like him. And we're already seeing people with abilities. And what if they're not benevolent like Superman? So the logical extension of that is, what if another Superman comes along and he's not susceptible to kryptonite, he's from somewhere else, and we have to stop him? And obviously, the logical response is send out a girl in skimpy pants and with a baseball bat, and someone with a boomerang, because I think that's
and someone who's a good shot, yeah.
And someone who's a good shot against someone who's fucking bulletproof. So the logic of them being together is a bit flawed, to say the least. But give it that pass. I mean, really, they should have had a different rationale. It should have been something else, anything else.
It could have been because. They kind of had Enchantress, didn't they? And you can kind of go, oh, okay. And
but even then, they caused that problem was caused by them all being brought together. So they caused the problem they're sent to solve. She spends most of the film with a beam shooting up at the sky, trying to create a machine. We don't know what that machine is, and she's sort of slightly twerking and shaking her ass, and it's a bit like
being overdubbed.
It's a bit like Ghostbusters done badly. The end of it, the original Ghostbusters.
Because even down to the fact that when it's all done and settled, like she turns into like a statue and breaks out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. It's not very good, and I just think any other excuse for them being together would have made a bit more sense. It doesn't have to be a meta-human crisis. It could be a power vacuum caused by the absence of Superman. Anything. So that wasn't particularly good. I think structurally it's not really a film in that I didn't do a check on my watch, but it felt like we were in Act 3 by 25 minutes in, which is just weird.
Which bit was that like?
Well, basically you've got Act 1 and 2 are sort of combined into one because you've got her explaining the rationale for her putting the team together, which is bollocks, but okay. And then you've got the backstories, which in some cases are repeated multiple times. And then they get together and they're straight out on the street and we're into the main body of the film and only like half an hour or so has gone by. And you're in the final act of the film and it goes on forever. All of a sudden they're sort of strolling along the street being warned by Kinnaman's character, whatever he's called, Rick Flag. And it's like, oh, we're at this point of the film already. Okay, fair enough. And then they're attacked by a bunch of guys who basically look like they've been tarred and then had Maltesers fired at them. Which is just weird, and I think that's part of like trying to get the rating that they're not killing real people. But it's just ridiculous, and we're not introduced immediately to what they are. We see that afterwards from the Enchantress.
Apparently she's kissed like all of them. That's how they turned into.
Yeah, so she's going to come down with like glandular fever now, and that's how she gets beaten. Now it's all a bit ill thought through, and it's partly rescued by the fact that. I mean, Paul Dini created Harley Quinn for the animated series. That's where she started in the early 90s. And he just tweeted the words "nailed it" about her. That And I think he's right. I think you can argue all night about what she's wearing and whether it's exploitative and the relationship with the Joker. And I'd be willing to have those conversations with people because I think there's some interesting conversations to be had. But a character I didn't think you could do live action, I think we've already had, first time out, the definitive take on it. So I think that's terrific.
Well, it's basically perfect casting. She
I
came
think
at the
so.
right time, and
Right time, right age.
and I think it hit me. I mean, I no worries about it because it just like as soon as she was announced, like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, perfect, makes sense. She'll be absolutely fine in that role. But I think what really
I know for years what she called Kristen Bell was desperate to play the role.
really
For years, yeah.
I can kind of see that working.
But of course, she's mid-30s
on.
now, and if you want to get a few years out of her, she's probably a little too old.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that working too. But yeah, it's just perfect, and you'll get a few years out of her in the role as well.
It's like when she's shooting through like the car at Batman going, "You're ruining date night." I was like, that is like, yeah, that is it. That is Harley Quinn right there.
Jury's out. I think the jury's out on the Joker.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm tempted to say I don't like him, and I've got some reasons for not liking him.
Me
but
too.
I actually think I'm going to just pull back and say the jury's out. He's only in it for about 4 minutes.
And yeah, I do feel we've not got. I think, to be honest, I think he's in it like the right amount, roughly. I just don't think the film utilizes
He
him
shouldn't
enough.
be in it at all, to be honest with you.
I mean, again, he could be, in theory, he could be used as a catalyst as to why to send the Suicide Squad in there.
Send them out after the Joker. That makes more sense. It does.
To have that kind of thing. I mean, I'm no scriptwriter.
They weren't in Arkham. They were in prison.
Yeah.
I don't think you'd want to do this because they are effectively going to make an Arkham Asylum film, I think. But send them into Arkham Asylum or anything. Not if we get another Superman, because immediately it's like, well, their skill set wouldn't work against Superman.
Yeah, I mean, the annoying thing is, though, that whole thing could have changed had they just rewritten the dialogue and just say, like, well,
Actually,
we've got these, like, these criminals who are completely uncontrollable. Well, how about I get control and make them do some good for once, and if it goes tits up, we'll just throw them under the bus. You can
still end up,
and it's like
you could escalate to a supernatural threat.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be brought out to do something with, say, the Joker, and then the Enchantress goes rogue or something.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I thought.
And then it's like, well, how
best.
do we deal with this? She's superpowered?
Because I think because when I watched it, and I'm no scriptwriter, but I thought a better plot synopsis, and it works better for them as a team to kind of like go in kind of like chaperoned by Rick Flag, like sort of going in like sort of watching over them, making sure they behave, kind of like a trial by run. But when shit goes down, we're basically like every other like any other team military gets wiped out apart from Rick Flag and the Suicide Squad, and it's like, well, they're all we have now. And it becomes,
Are you telling me Harley Quinn is better than like trained Marines and stuff?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, Deadshot maybe, because like if it is about shooting, then he's more accurate than any of them because it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
But yeah, none of it really made sense. But it was mainly the structure. The other thing is, of course, what if we get another Superman? Well, I think a man who climbs walls would be quite useful. It's like, well, is that his only power? Well, yeah, that's useful against the guy who can fucking
his power
fly.
to die in like 30 seconds.
I know. So it was poor. But if I had to watch this or Batman Superman now, it would be this. And it isn't just because this is an hour shorter than that cut. It is just it's more fun. But again, it's another one of these where you've got to switch off your brain, and there's no call for that really. These things don't have to be stupid.
No, I mean, I don't mind things being stupid. I think as long as it's narratively consistent. I think this does overdo it with the flashbacks. I don't think it does any other characters justice. It mainly focuses on Harley Quinn and Deadshot, which is fair enough. They are like two biggest draws. But I think they could have given some more character work to the others. and I think just certain little things here and there could have balanced it out a lot better. I think what we have is okay. I think it's an okay, entertaining film, but just hampered by just being a bit of a mess. And I just think with certain tweaks and with certain ideas just changed around, we would have had a lot better film. We would have had kind of like a Dirty Dozen, but a comic book version of that. So, which is a shame, but I like the director, and I do like his sort of his panache, so I was gonna enjoy it anyway. I mean, I even liked was it Sabotage? So
Well, they've got this film. There's a period where we see, because this is largely, might be exclusively. I'd have to sit and think about it, but it's Batman villains. Harley is, the Joker is, Deadshot is, Killer Croc is. Not sure about the rest off the top of my head. But we see all that, and we see shots of Batman in it, and we do get a shot of Arkham Asylum, and it's wonderfully stylized. I mean, Nolan was going for something different. He was going for a much more real-world take, but like his Arkham Asylum I wasn't that keen on. And I just think there's still a fantastic world to have here if you want, because you can get that sort of hyper stylized version that still feels kind of plausible. You could have a Poison Ivy in this universe.
Yeah, it's very more comic book, isn't it?
Yeah, but they have fluffed their first 2 or 3, depending on how you want to count it, entries.
So, what did you make on the new Joker? I know you sort of hinted that you tempted to not like it, but you wanted more. What were your thoughts of what you actually did see?
0 screen presence.
Okay, yeah.
I think there's there's several problems actually, but a lot of them I'm not really sure how to articulate. My eye kept being drawn by that stupid fucking damaged thing he's got tattooed on his forehead. So that's a problem.
I thought the teeth were a bit much as well.
Yeah, there is a story behind both of those things.
Yeah.
And they're linked, but even so, it's not in the film, so it kind of don't count. I didn't think he had any screen presence. I was looking at him and thinking, yep, that's the Joker, and he kind of looks like the Joker, and he kind of sounds a bit like the Joker.
I thought the makeup was kind of bad. Like, it just felt, it felt like punk cosplay.
I wasn't keen.
I was thinking about it. I mean, maybe I'm being a comic book snob, but I was thinking about Joker as a character, and what I saw was basically just a gangster with makeup, essentially, because they were kind of doing like a Bonnie and Clyde thing with him and Harley, which I get the temptation, but for me, Joker he's too much like he's basically an anarchist. Harley, I get why Harley would go and free Joker. I do not get that Joker would go and free Harley. I think Joker would happily just like leave Harley in the shit and not really think twice about it. I mean, I guess there might be some, maybe deep down inside of him, some sort of like favoritism with Harley, but generally, if you were going to take Joker purely as a character, even if he generally realised that, he would probably kill Harley just to kind of like, well, you kind of go against my
majority of what he shot is on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what was in that. I know Jared Leto's not happy because basically he was like, it's easier to ask what's been left in than what's been cut out. It's quite funny how method he's gone for the sake of like 4 minutes of screen time, selling people condoms and fucking rats and shit.
Which to me just sounds like insane things to do. Like, even if you feel like you're going to play someone like the Joker, method acting's not the way, is it really?
I'm not. Yeah, I know the story about Laurence Olivier talking to
Dustin
Hoffman, and I think that's always told by like older people who are like the world used to be better. Frankly, method acting has produced results over the years. The acting standards from the last 30 to 40 years are way higher than you would have got 6-7 decades ago on average. But at the same time, you hear of pranks like that, and you do just think, "Oh, why don't you just fucking act it?"
The thing is, it's how you predict the fact. I mean, I heard like things like De Niro, like driving a taxi for Taxi Driver. You know,
Yeah.
I can kind of see it doing that because
Understanding the
it's
mindset
like
and the loneliness as well, because you're on your own a
or
lot
if
of the
not,
time.
well, if he doesn't get anything out of it, well, it'll be a laugh anyway. You know what I mean? Or something. It'll be like an experiment just to see.
Well, you're expanding your life
Yeah.
experience as you're expanding your portfolio. So fine, and I don't,
And we can, in terms of bit of boxing and things like that, obviously you have to get
but
in
shutting
training.
yourself away and thinking about it is, I mean, Heath Ledger shut himself away quite a lot in the build up to that. And that's all method as well. That's like imagining the feelings and using a bit of sense memory and all the rest of it. I don't see that sending your cast members a used condom helps.
The only thing I would think he was trying to do was send the rest of the cast on edge with him, and that's what the kind of what that's what he was going for.
Virtually none of them interact with him, though.
Well, that's a dumb thing. I mean, you think about Joker. Really, his performance is primarily pantomime. I mean, you can argue with Heath Ledger because Nolan's take was kind of more scary, serious thing.
I do wonder if we're kind of back to where we were when we were talking about Apocalypse. That we lack confidence, therefore shove Wolverine in. These are all B-listers at best. Everyone knows the Joker, though. Look how well The Dark Knight did.
Yeah.
Throw the Joker in.
I mean, like, going in, I wasn't sold, to be fair, because I just thought, well, he's just doing a Heath Ledger impression.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
And he just
when he says, "I'm going to hurt you real bad," that sounds a bit Nicholson as well.
What does?
When he's about to electroshock her, and he says, "I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to hurt you real bad."
Yeah,
I got a feeling that is even a Jack Nicholson
line.
That
with like how Joker would sell that. I mean, like, by laughing at it, he kind of does the whole "I'm just going to hurt you real bad." It's just like, oh, come on, that's not Joker. Joker is very much more random. Joker kind of like does all these terrible things, but does it for the sake of a joke. There
are room for different interpretations, and I'm kind of all right with it. I just felt he didn't have a lot of screen presence. He's not helped by the fact he doesn't belong in this film. And frankly, because they've ended up cutting so much of his part, now it's ended up making Jared Leto look like a bit of a piss pot.
And
all that effort for about
and the flashbacks
time. What
wasn't really needed. I mean, like, do we need the?
They flash you back to stuff you've already seen half the time.
Well, like, it's like, do we need the scene where he kind of tells Harley Quinn to kind of like jump into that vat of acid that only like dissolves clothes? I don't understand what that even was or why that's even there.
It was a chemical, wasn't it? Not necessarily.
Other than to prove the fact that. It's like Joker does have. Oh, he loves Harley, really. Kind of thing. Which
it told us nothing.
But even to me, that kind of.
And also, looking at her in a blouse with glasses reminds me of watching like Arrow or something, because that's got really MTV casting. When they need to cast someone who's intelligent, they get a fucking supermodel and stick some glasses on her. It's a bit like that, but it's been over maligned, I think, but let's not pretend it wears the scars of a troubled production, and it's a bit unsure what it wants to be. Because when you went, it could have been the Dirty Dozen, I'm thinking, yeah, it really could have been, and that would have been pretty good.
Yeah, I think it nearly could have been if it had just changed a few. I know it's easy to say when the film's done.
But I still don't think the DC universe is dead. I really don't. But there's only so long people are going to be patient here. At the moment, you're 0 for 3 if you count Man of Steel. I kind of think of Man of Steel almost as a transitional film, even though it's the same universe. I think it kicked off properly this year, but the fact is you're 0 for 3 or 0 for 2, depending on how you want to count it. At very best, if you like Man of Steel, because it was a bit more popular, you're 1 for 2.
I mean, I think the real thing is for them to learn with like the next few films, which is Wonder Woman and really Justice League, really is probably the key. Because they've already started production. I mean, I think people had the hopes just as Suicide Squad had the bills had the chance to, there was anticipation for Suicide Squad to do well. There was pressure on it, where I don't think there necessarily was going to be pressure. Because they think that they had, we've got Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad's going to be like a fun little sort of stopgap between Wonder Woman. And I think when that got critically panned, I think people were looking at Suicide Squad a bit more than they actually intended to. Like, oh crap, they're looking at it a bit more seriously. So I think it had like certain expectations that were above what it originally was going to be. So maybe that didn't help. But
yeah, it could have been just this little quirky palate cleanser between the two sort of A-listers.
Yeah, well, because I think that if you think about the idea,
and then Batman
I think that's
Superman
what it was.
crap, and everyone tries to hang their hat on this.
Yeah,
and it's put a lot of pressure on Wonder Woman now.
Yeah, which hopefully we're good. I mean, I heard I heard some reports that it's a mess again. But
that's not a
But the director squashed it. But then again,
offline, I will point you to an article that kind of sort of debunks that, or at least casts serious doubts on what that person could know. And I'll point you in the direction of that. But I'm not going to have any. I'm not even going to guess anymore. I'm really not. Let's just see where we end up.
Hopefully, it'll be good. To finally have a Wonder Woman film that, and hopefully, to have a Wonder Woman film and actually be good.
It's not the film you want to fluff.
No, it's quite a big film either way, if it's part of the franchise or not. Not
only that, if it flops, then they're a conservative lot, and they're going to look at it and go, maybe we don't do a Black Widow film. Maybe we downsize Captain Marvel a little bit.
Are they doing a Black Widow film, or are they planning to do a Black Widow film?
Well, there's talk of it. There's nothing in the schedule at the moment. But what I'm saying is, this underperforming will make them more nervous because they haven't exactly invested in female superhero leads so far. So, I
don't think. I think if it underperforms, it will have nothing to do with the fact that it's got a female lead, though.
No, but I'm not sure that they will look for anything they can control.
Yeah.
And if they if they can control who they cast, and if they or who leads their films, so if they get the feeling that perhaps it isn't going to work, they won't put money to these things.
Which is funny from the offset. Like, it sounds like Wonder Woman sounds like DC's answer to Captain America. In a manner of speaking.
Yeah. Because it's a period piece and Wonder Woman. Yeah, probably.
In certain character traits as well, Yeah.
Are we done, buddy? I think we've gone through the summer.
I think we have. I can't think of anything else. I mean, it's been pretty mediocre.
Still another summer without a sequel to What Women Want, but we can hope.
We'll start a petition.
That's why the summer failed.
What we want is Mel Gibson with
shaving his legs and smoking heavily until he learns to be a better man. Because you smoke when you're evil,
Yeah, but instead we got Kevin Spacey as a cat.
Okay, that's not done very well. I'm stunned.
No. Was there actually any more films due out?
No, Hollywood's shutting down forever.
No, it's only I mean, it's only like David Brent, isn't
This year we got the David Brent film in the summer, but
there's The Shallows, which I've not seen yet.
There is another Jack Reacher film coming in October. We've got Doctor Strange. We've got Rogue One. So there are plenty of films before the end of the year.
But it's not any in this coming month, apart from like the sort of, the David Brent film, which is
cost $400 million to make and is all CG. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, sure, I know you are.
Yeah, but mainly because I've had Lady Gypsy in my fucking head for how long? Look it up, folks. Lady Gypsy, David Brent's music video.
Yeah, was it Lavender? Heather, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
folks.
David, I would ask you what you want to plug, but you only got like your Twitter handle and basically the other podcast you do, which is with me.
Okay, well, my Twitter handle's at thepastykid1976, and you're welcome to promote our other gig.
Yeah,
it's our main gig now, because we do it every week.
Do You Expect Us to Talk? Started off as a Bond podcast, we moved on to Indie, and now we moved on to Star Trek, where we will look at each film of a franchise and give it what do we call it?
Sober analysis.
Sober analysis, yeah. So it's critical thinking and dick jokes is essentially the.
Yes. Chris once said that every time he thinks of me, he thinks of cum. I'm not going to examine that statement any further.
I don't think I need to.
I'm really hoping it's the jokes.
And so we're currently doing Star Trek. We just recorded the intro one. We'll be doing some commentaries as well. We
do all the films, and we do a couple of other bits as well. We normally do some commentaries. Sometimes we do music episodes. Bond, for example, we covered 25 films because we covered Never Say Never Again, but it was a 37 episode series, so you will get extras.
Bonus extras. And so listen.
Patrick
away.
Stewart was in extras as well.
And
had he seen everything?
I almost kind of wish that film exists. just some mental reality. Just
him wandering around looking at ladies' tits.
Actually, no. Even if you don't actually see the tits, just like his reactions, just seeing the reaction in his face.
It's just the disjointed nature of the plot that you'd have him riding a bike on the grass. Then you'd have somebody, I can't remember who the first person who he sees naked. Then you'd have him flying a plane in Iraq after being at the World Cup and scoring the winning goal. And it's all just to see tits.
It's like that episode of The Twilight Zone where everyone just bows to this kind of
And the Shat was in the Twilight Zone.
Coincidence?
I think not.
Have you seen that episode? I'm sure you had.
Yes.
I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I did.
Think there's room for the a Twilight Zone type show to come back and...
Yeah, I think it would be called the Twilight Zone.
All right. Do you think Twilight Zone should come back and...
These things always get revived now and again. I remember back in the 90s they brought back the Outer Limits for a while.
Didn't Forrest Whitaker do Twilight Zone a few years back?
Who, sorry?
Didn't Forrest Whitaker do the Twilight Zone a few years back?
No idea. I don't know. There was a Twilight Zone movie. I don't really remember. I don't know too much about it. But I have seen the Shatner episode, yeah, where he's on a plane.
No, that's... is that Shatner? I'm pretty sure there's another one where he's at a gas station and he's kind of trapped. He's there.
Trapped gas?
Yes. But he's like...
Shatner's got trapped gas.
No, but it's something like he can't escape. He can't escape. He can't find... it's like everything's conspired around... he can't leave the...
If ever a situation seems to have called for some overacting, that's the one.
I'll look it up. I'll definitely look it up. I think you're right. I think he did a couple, didn't he?
Listeners, you won't hear about it unless you go and listen to Do You Expect Us to Talk, because we'll talk about it on there.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to getting into some Shat action.
Yeah. I'm editing the intro show right now, but as the latest released episode is the last of the Indiana Jones films.
Which I recommend you listen to number 3. Because I think that's our favourite, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think any of us argue it's the best, but it's our own personal favourites, given our age and Sean Connery and all the rest of it.
So, you can find me on Twitter at Cinematronics, you can find this podcast at cinematronics.co.uk and my website, as long as Do You Expect Us to Talk. So David, thank you for joining me for our little delve into this
classic summer.
Yes. I mean, chances are next year's will probably be better. I mean,
this was a good summer if you like,
average films, 3-star films.
Yeah.
Well, Civil War was good, I suppose.
Civil War was pretty good. Jungle Book was pretty good. Just very little blew me away. And but it's just one of those things. And again, a lot of the big ticket stuff comes out in the winter now. We're going to get Star Wars in the winter for the next couple of entries anyway. So let's just see. But obviously next year we've got Justice League and Infinity Wars, and no, we haven't got an Infinity War next year, have we? It's the year after.
Yeah, we've got Guardians, haven't we?
We've got Guardians, Thor, Ragnarok, and Black Panther next year, and Spider-Man.
Wow,
They're all
4.
next. Yeah, well, it's 3, but then obviously they got Spider-Man back.
Yeah.
Well, sort of back. Yeah. So. Anyway, but having said that, if you want to hear about quality films, hear us talk about Star Trek: The Motionless Picture next week. Shatner looking at a ship he's seen thousands of times for 6.5 minutes.
To be fair, he's probably mostly seen it from the inside, so...
I think that's true of a lot of things in his life. What a boy.
Good night, folks.
Good night, folks.